Well, no, I think they can run on the desktop in Windows, but I don't think they pay too much attention to Windows. But I have not tested it. That's just what they say. So take that with a little grain of salt. All right. So I just kind of want to recap the Bootcamp here. So we looked at, I don't know, 8 or 9 different applications while we're here that used a fair amount of variety of different VR libraries. So 3 or 4 that ran on Vrui. We'll do the LiDAR that compares with the Koust things afterwards, and I forgot I wanted to compare. A couple that used FreeVR. So Dave's MATLAB used FreeVR, and VMD used FreeVR. We looked a little bit about CalVR. We didn't really look at Syzygy while we were here, but Dave's MATLAB program runs on Syzygy, which kind of surprised me. I thought that Syzygy was kind of dying, and then all of a sudden I discovered, well, Dave's still using it, and they just installed it in Wisconsin. And
right now, yeah, and we've gotten the Wisconsin people to use it. This is another project that I didn't even talk about, but at the IEEE VR conference, one of our students from last summer made a neutrino detector viewer in Syzygy, and I guess there's a big project for a different neutrino detector at Madison that we're going to collaborate
okay.
with. But basically it detects all these events that happen inside a cylinder, but then they try to like back project and figure out where the event happened inside of that cylinder.
Right.
So.
Right, and then we didn't really talk too much about VRPN, but it's kind of been in the background on a lot of things. And it's not really, it's a VR library on its own, although reading about the history of VRPN, it was meant to initially be its own VR library, but then they wrote all these input stuff that they just use other people's things.
Yeah, and it's just to give another background, like the other reason I use Syzygy, I use it and was not too hard for me to port the ML2VR thing to FreeVR is because I find both of those libraries are really, they just give you like an update loop and a draw callback. So they don't provide this like buying into all these sets of tools and plugins and application things. So, which is good and bad.
That was kind of the style. Well, FreeVR was after the style of the Cave library, and the Cave library style was kind of let you do the graphics and it'll just handle what it needs to handle, and that's it. And then like Oliver wanted to make it so that the developer didn't have to do as much work, and so he did all the work for them, right? But then you're limited. You're kind of put in that way. What do I have? Oh, those were the VR libraries. Some visualization tools kind of with VR added on. We looked at 2 of them. There's a couple of commercial ones, or there's more than a couple, but a couple of commercial ones that people in the group are familiar with. Dave's at Duke uses Aviso, and INL has used Nsight. We were trying to kind of not talk too much about commercial things here. And then we didn't talk a lot about OpenGL intercepts, except in MATLAB talk and at dinner. I think there was a lot of discussion of TechViz. We didn't talk too much about Conduit. I know Jameson's a little familiar with using it. And did you guys? Where'd Eric go? There you are. You used it. Okay, so you tested it. You experienced it. Yeah. Right. And so all 3. So Conduit and TechViz are kind of, they try to serve lots of different applications. Although if you buy them, they only promise it'll work for the ones you're paying for. And of course, MATLAB to VR works for the one it says it works for, right?
Yeah. And it's nowhere you reported that it's a general purpose.
Right. Right. All right. And then so we've looked at all these different things, and so we've discussed a little bit. Why would you choose a particular library or particular method of getting your graphics into VR? Some what I think are subjective reasons. Well, I've already got that library here, so I'm just going to use it. I'm already familiar with coding for it, which are valid reasons, but more subjective. I think these are, in my mind at least, more objective. Well, I wanted the widgets. It had widgets, so that's a good reason I'm going to choose that library. Or I need clustering because I have a cluster. I don't have one machine rendering on all my screens, and so that sort of at least divides up the group of multi-user capable. People are worried about multi-user capable these days, but if you are, then there's that also limits your choices. I think some of them are easier to configure than others, although none of them are sort of perfect. And then really, I think kind of one of the better reasons is whether you can find a lot of people to share your experience with, and that'll make your life a lot easier when you're trying to learn a new system. Another dichotomy between them is kind of this style. You know, what VRUI does, and a lot of what we looked at, and because it works better for scientific visualization, is you have stuff floating in front of you that kind of occupies this space, right? Even regardless of the scale of the data. Whereas for training applications or entertainment applications, you want to be more walking in the world. The world is around you, it's behind you, and you can choose which part of it you want to see. And so different VR libraries, I think, affect that a little bit better. All right, so we talked a little bit earlier in the IQ Station discussion that we have this wiki, and so, you know, one of the things I'm hoping we can do through this boot camp is you know, stay in touch beyond the boot camp, and you know, share information through wikis. It doesn't have to be this one, but we have one set up that's initially was for low-cost VR, but we also talk a lot of these applications. So we have a page like on Tort, Summery, and a page on VRUI, and a page on FreeVR, and there's a page on VMD, and a page on ParaView. So we're trying to build up all these applications where we, and I even go through, here's how you build ParaView, right? And here's how you build VMD for FreeVR, here's how you run it, right? And so that way we can share information, and as things maybe kind of lag, as things do on wikis, someone can come along and say, hey, you know, you missed a step, or this step changed or something. And I mentioned earlier, the wiki is globally readable, but limited write access, and you just have to ask me to get on that list. And going backwards.
Bill, did you say that Dan Cummings would be willing to give up
Yes.
his domain, which is...
Oh, I don't know if he would, actually. I have to ask him. He's willing to let us blog on his domain, certainly. But I will ask him, because he's not really doing it anymore. Right. It's very specific. Now, there is a group that has a forum in Google Forums that does immersive visualization, and they have allowed us to take it over because there's only 2 posts, one by them to say, hey, welcome to our forum, and then one by Herb Schilling at NASA, who wanted to kind of get things going again. So in just a couple months ago, he posted something, and so this is perhaps a place we could go if, you know. Oh, and so unless, you know, email me if you, or I'll ask before I send it out. But we'll try and share our emails with each other and slides from the for those willing to share. And that's it. So lunch is served. Yeah, George.
Sorry,
No.
how can I register to that IQ Station?
You mail me, and then I put you on the list. It's the wiki that we run in our group. All right. All right, now we can do lunch. And I'll run the LiDAR viewer thing too.